Hey everyone, I'm on a mission to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I'd love your help to get there. If you're enjoying the content, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button right now and join the family.
Cleveland is on fire. Not literally, but emotionally. The entire city has erupted in disbelief, anger, and a strange sense of relief. After years of excuses, collapses, and heartbreak, the move everyone swore would never happen finally did. Kevin Stefanski, the so-called architect of the Browns' new era, is gone. Fired, erased from the building after one of the most humiliating performances in franchise history. And it didn't take a long boardroom debate or some drawn-out investigation. It took 10 minutes. 10 minutes for ownership to decide that enough was enough, that the Stefansky experiment had officially run its course. The timing couldn't have been more brutal, right after a nationally televised beatdown by the New England Patriots, a team the football world had written off as a rebuilding project. Yet somehow, Cleveland managed to make them look like a dynasty all over again. For Browns fans, this wasn't just another loss. It was an unraveling years in the making, the final straw that exposed a team divided from within. You could feel it brewing for weeks, the boos growing louder, the chants for Shedeur Sanders echoing through the stadium, the side-eye glances between veterans and coaches who'd stopped believing in each other. Sunday's meltdown was simply the detonation point, and when the final whistle blew, there was no confusion left, no debates on sports radio, no defending the indefensible. The city that once begged for patience had finally lost it. Overnight, Cleveland went from restless to ruthless, from hoping for change to demanding it. And right in the middle of that storm stood one name everyone kept shouting, Shedeur Sanders, the player who had been waiting quietly for this exact moment. Because while one era in Cleveland just ended, another one is about to begin. It all came crashing down in Foxboro. A Sunday that was supposed to be a bounce-back game turned into a public execution on national television. The Browns didn't just lose, they collapsed in a way that felt symbolic, almost cinematic. Every bad decision, every stubborn choice Kevin Stefanski made over the past season seemed to converge in one catastrophic performance. Dillon Gabriel, the quarterback he clung to like a security blanket, played the worst game of his professional career. 2 brutal interceptions, each uglier than the last. The first, a lazy throw that floated straight into the arms of a linebacker who barely had to move. The second, a desperation heave into triple coverage, the kind of throw that makes you wonder if the quarterback even saw the defense at all. On the sidelines, the cameras captured everything. Players shaking their heads, veterans pacing in frustration, and somewhere near midfield, Shedeur Sanders standing quietly, helmet in hand, eyes fixed on the chaos unraveling in front of him. He didn't yell, didn't grandstand, he just watched. And that silent stare said everything the crowd was screaming. Cleveland had their future standing right there, ready and waiting, while their head coach doubled down on a sinking ship. Myles Garrett sat on the bench, hands gripping his helmet, staring at the scoreboard like he was trying to wake himself from a nightmare. Wide receivers waved frantically in the end zone, running wide open while Gabriel missed them by 5 yards or drilled the ball into the turf. The play calling was predictable. The offense looked lost, and the sideline energy was gone. It wasn't just bad football, it was the kind of meltdown that breaks teams apart from the inside. And in that moment, you could feel something shift. The fans in the stands weren't angry anymore. They were numb. Social media lit up before the final whistle even blew, demanding change. Stefanski's expression on the sidelines said it all. A man frozen in disbelief, realizing his system had finally turned against him. This wasn't just a loss. It was the breaking point. The exact moment everyone, from ownership to the last fan in the nosebleeds, realized Cleveland couldn't go forward with Kevin Stefanski calling the shots. And as the Patriots celebrated, the Browns walked off that field knowing one thing: something massive was about to change. Behind closed doors, the tension had reached a boiling point long before the cameras ever caught it. Inside the Browns locker room, the cracks in the foundation were no longer cracks, they were fault lines. Weeks of frustration had built into quiet resentment, and by the time the team returned from Foxboro, that silence had turned into open rebellion. Veterans were whispering amongst themselves, position groups were splintered, and coaches looked exhausted trying to hold together a locker room that no longer respected the man in charge. What once felt like a team had started to feel like two different worlds, one that believed in Kevin Stefansky's system and another that believed he was holding them back. Players had seen the same thing fans saw. Shedeur Sanders lighting up practices, commanding huddles with confidence, throwing lasers that made defensive players shake their heads and smile. But come game day, he stayed on the sideline, helmet in hand, while Stefansky rode with Dillon Gabriel no matter how bad it got. To the veterans, it felt like stubbornness. To the younger players, it felt like betrayal. "We're wasting our season," one player reportedly muttered after a late September loss. "We've got the guy right here and we're acting like we don't know it." That sentiment spread fast. By the time the Patriots game rolled around, the tension was thick enough to choke on. Coaches tried to calm things down with team meetings, but nobody was buying in. Stefansky's messages, once disciplined and measured, now came off like empty slogans. "We'll clean it up. We trust the process." The players didn't trust the process anymore. They trusted what they saw with their own eyes every day in practice, a quarterback who could change everything sitting on the bench. After the blowout in Foxboro, the locker room turned from quiet to combustible. Helmets slammed into lockers. A few words were exchanged that crossed the line from frustration to fury. Some players defended the staff out of respect. Others were done being diplomatic. "This isn't the team we built. We're better than this," one veteran reportedly said. The frustration wasn't just about losing. It was about purpose. It was about belief.
And the deeper issue? Everyone knew it wasn't going to get better. Not with Stefansky still calling the shots. Not with Gabriel under center. The mood was heavy, the energy drained, and yet beneath that exhaustion was something else. Readiness. Like a storm that had been building pressure for too long. Everyone could feel that something big was about to break. And when the press walked into the post-game conference room minutes later, the players didn't need to say a word. Stefansky's expression, his hollow eyes, and the silence that followed the first tough question told them everything. The revolt had already begun, and the man in charge didn't even know it yet. When Kevin Stefansky walked into that press conference, you could see the defeat before he even spoke. His posture said it all. Shoulders slumped, eyes heavy, voice stripped of conviction. He looked like a man who had already been fired and just hadn't been told yet. The lights were bright, the cameras rolling, but the energy in that room was dead. Every reporter could sense it. Every fan watching from home could feel it. This wasn't just a coach explaining a bad loss. It was a man trying to survive his own ending. He started with the usual cliches, the ones Cleveland had heard 1,000 times before. "We've got to execute better. We've got to coach better. We'll get back to fundamentals." Words that sounded robotic now, almost rehearsed, like he was reading from a teleprompter no one else could see. But this time, the press wasn't buying it. They'd seen the same train wreck everyone else had. They'd seen Dillon Gabriel gift-wrap turnovers, wideout screaming for the ball, and a defense breaking under the weight of its own frustration. This wasn't about execution anymore. This was about leadership. Then came the question, the one that ended it all. A veteran reporter, voice calm but cutting, asked the thing everyone at home was yelling at their TV. "Coach, do you still believe Dillon Gabriel gives this team the best chance to win?" The room froze. Stefansky's eyes darted from left to right like he was searching for an exit that didn't exist. He opened his mouth, paused, then closed it again. The silence stretched for what felt like forever, long enough for the clicking of camera shutters to echo like a countdown clock. When he finally spoke, it wasn't conviction that came out, it was confusion. We believe in the system we've built," he mumbled, his voice flat. "Consistency matters." But no one believed him. Not the reporters, not the fans, not even his players watching from the hallway. The mask had slipped, and what everyone saw underneath was fear. The look of a man who knew the room had turned against him. By the time he left the podium, social media was already dissecting every second of that awkward pause, every twitch in his expression, every hollow phrase that sounded more like surrender than leadership. That clip, 7 seconds of silence, went viral within the hour. It was the moment Kevin Stefansky stopped being the Browns head coach in the eyes of the public. He just didn't know it yet. And as the press conference ended, reporters exchanged looks that said everything words couldn't. The decision wasn't official yet, but everyone in that room could feel it coming.
Something irreversible had just happened, and by the next sunrise, that feeling would turn into breaking news. The second the press conference ended, Cleveland didn't just react, it exploded. Social media turned into a digital riot, a citywide venting session that spread across the entire football world. Within an hour, #FireStefansky wasn't just trending, it was dominating. #1 in the nation, above politics, above celebrity gossip, above everything else. Fans flooded every corner of the internet. X, Instagram, Reddit, even Facebook, unleashing years of bottled-up frustration in one massive wave of rage. It wasn't just disappointment anymore, it was collective fury. "He benched Shedeur for this?" one fan wrote, a post that hit 1 million views in minutes. "We lost by 19 to a team with no quarterback," another screamed. The Browns' official social media accounts were buried under a flood of comments demanding change. It wasn't a debate, it was an uprising. And this time it wasn't just the fans. National voices started to pile on too. Stephen A. Smith went on ESPN and called Stefansky's play calling coaching malpractice of the highest order. Shannon Sharpe, never one to hold back, said Cleveland was wasting a generational talent and embarrassing themselves on national television. Even Pat McAfee joined in, laughing mid-show as he said, "If the Browns don't make this move by sunrise, they're certifiably insane." The drumbeat grew louder by the minute. Analysts, former players, talk show hosts, everyone was saying the same thing. The Stefansky era was over. The question wasn't if he'd be fired, it was when. And while the front office stayed silent, the fan base refused to. Thousands of Browns supporters changed their profile pictures to Shedeur Sanders' college highlights. Others dug up old press clips where Stefansky had dismissed rookie hype, using his own words against him. By midnight, the pressure was unbearable. Even neutral fans, people who didn't care about Cleveland, were tuning in, refreshing feeds, waiting for the news to break. The internet had turned Stefansky's silence into a national spectacle. Every meme, every clip, every comment pushed the story further into overdrive. It was no longer about football. It was about accountability. The fans wanted a head on a platter, and ownership could feel the flames licking at their doorstep.
And when the sun finally rose over Lake Erie, it happened. Phones buzzed, notifications lit up, and breaking news alerts flashed across every sports network in America. The Cleveland Browns had officially fired Kevin Stefansky, effective immediately. No soft phrasing, no mutual separation, just cold, decisive action. And while the headlines were short, the message behind them was clear. Cleveland had reached its limit. The city had spoken. The fans had won. But inside the locker room, the reaction wasn't anger. It was something else entirely. Something that caught even the front office by surprise. Because while the internet was celebrating Stefansky's downfall, the players were celebrating something completely different. The moment they'd been waiting for all season. It happened before sunrise, quiet, surgical, and colder than the Cleveland air outside. Kevin Stefansky was called into the facility at 5:42 a.m. by General Manager Andrew Berry. No entourage, no legal team, just two men, one empty office, and a decision that had already been made hours before. Berry walked in wearing team gear, as if it might somehow save him, the same hoodie and cap combo he'd worn for every post-loss film review. But there was no film to review this time, no comeback plan, just a sealed envelope on the table and a single sentence that ended his 4-year run in Cleveland. Berry didn't drag it out. There was no long speech about appreciation or what you've meant to the organization. It was direct, efficient, and emotionless, exactly how ownership wanted it. "Kevin, we're making a change," Berry said, voice steady. "Effective immediately." That was it. No chance to defend himself, no room for negotiation. The decision had been signed off by Jimmy Haslam at 2:17 a.m., right after the public meltdown reached its peak online. By the time Stefansky showed up, his keycard access had already been revoked. For a man who once represented stability, who brought discipline and analytics to a franchise known for chaos, it was a stunningly cold end.
Stefansky just sat there for a moment, hands folded, staring at the desk that had once been his command center. He didn't yell, he didn't beg, he just nodded slowly, like a man who had seen the storm coming but hoped it might pass him by. It didn't. The room stayed silent, except for the faint hum of the HVAC, and when he finally stood up, Barry didn't offer a handshake, just a quiet, "Good luck, Kevin." Security walked him out the back entrance. No cameras, no players in sight. Outside, a few early rising fans had gathered by the gates, holding signs and phones, waiting for confirmation of what they already knew. When the door opened and Stefansky emerged, hood up, duffel in hand, one fan shouted, "It's about damn time!" Another yelled, "Bring Shedeur in!" Stefansky didn't look back. He just kept walking, down the tunnel, past the empty parking lot, into a black SUV that pulled away without a word. Inside the building, though, everything changed instantly. Coaches whispered in hallways, assistants started packing offices. But in the locker room, the reaction wasn't anger, it was something else entirely. Something that caught even the front office by surprise. Because while the internet was celebrating Stefansky's downfall, the players were celebrating something completely different. The moment they'd been waiting for all season. The moment the news hit the locker room, it was like someone flipped a switch. For weeks, the Browns facility had felt like a morgue, heavy air, quiet voices, a team walking through the motions. But the second word spread that Kevin Stefansky was gone, the silence cracked wide open. Phones buzzed, laughter echoed off the walls for the first time in months. Music, real music, started blasting from the speakers again, and somewhere in the middle of it all, Shedeur Sanders walked in. He didn't have to say a word. The entire room turned toward him like gravity had shifted. Some players clapped, others just nodded, like they all silently knew what was about to happen. Garrett, who had been visibly frustrated all season, was the first to speak, a quick, sharp line that summed up the mood perfectly. Now we can play some real football. It wasn't anger, it wasn't disrespect, it was release, pure, unfiltered relief that the team finally had a chance to become what it should have been months ago. Veterans who had butted heads with Stefansky started joking again. Receivers who had stopped running full routes in practice were suddenly energized, hyped, focused. Even the trainers and staff who had tiptoed around the tension for weeks were grinning like they'd just been handed a second chance. The weight of the old regime had vanished in a matter of hours. This wasn't chaos, it was rebirth. Shedeur sat quietly at his locker, scrolling through his phone as teammates came up one by one. Handshakes, pats on the shoulder, little words of encouragement like, "It's your time," and "We got you." He wasn't celebrating, he was calculating. Calm, locked in, laser-focused. The kind of presence that doesn't need noise to command a room. For a player who hadn't even taken a snap since being benched, the amount of respect he held was staggering.
The team meeting that followed was short and explosive. Interim coach Callahan walked in, stood in front of the team, and dropped the only line that mattered. "We're done playing scared. Sanders is starting." The room erupted. Helmets banged against lockers, cheers bounced off the walls, and even the equipment guys were yelling. It felt like a revolution inside four concrete walls. Every ounce of pent-up frustration, every quiet doubt about the old system came pouring out in one collective roar. And just like that, the Browns, the same team that had been written off as dead 24 hours earlier, felt alive again. The vibe wasn't just optimism, it was defiance. This wasn't about one man being fired. It was about an entire roster taking back control of their season. And deep down, every player in that locker room knew one thing. If Shedeur Sanders delivered, this wouldn't just save the team, it would rewrite Cleveland's entire future. The stadium lights burned brighter that Sunday, but this time it wasn't about the opponent, it was about the kid under center. When Shedeur Sanders jogged out of the tunnel, the entire city seemed to hold its breath. The boos that once echoed through the stands were gone, replaced by a sound Cleveland hadn't made in months: hope. Fans weren't just cheering for a quarterback, they were rallying behind a movement. The rookie who'd been benched, silenced, and overlooked was finally stepping into the role everyone knew he was born for. From the first snap, it was clear something was different. The offense moved like it had been unshackled. No hesitation, no safe, scripted calls, just instinct and rhythm. Shedeur's first pass, a quick slant across the middle, hit Amari Cooper in stride for 18 yards. Simple, efficient, but the crowd exploded like it was a touchdown. Then came the tempo. No huddles, fast reads, pure aggression. The same players who'd looked lifeless a week ago were flying down the field with energy they hadn't shown all season. By the second drive, Shedeur was already commanding the huddle like a veteran. His voice carried over the chaos, calm, confident, surgical. The cameras caught him smiling after a hard hit, brushing himself off and pointing downfield for the next play. He wasn't playing to prove Stefanski wrong. He was playing to prove Cleveland right. Then it happened, the moment that sealed everything. 3rd and long, pocket collapsing, Shedeur stepped up, spun off a defender, and launched a 45-yard bomb across his body to Elijah Moore, who snagged it inches before the sideline. The crowd erupted. Garrett pounded his chest on the sideline. Even Callahan couldn't hide his grin. That wasn't just a throw, it was a statement. The rookie had arrived, and he wasn't going anywhere. By halftime, Cleveland was leading for the first time in weeks. The offense looked alive, the fans were on their feet, and the commentators were already calling it the turning point. But inside the locker room, Shedeur didn't celebrate. He just sat quietly, staring at his play sheet, muttering one line over and over, "We're not done yet." That calm fire, that mix of swagger and discipline, was what the team had been missing all along. When the final whistle blew, the scoreboard told the story. Browns 31, opponent 17. But what happened on that field went far deeper than a win. Cleveland hadn't just found a quarterback, they found a leader, a face for the franchise, a symbol of everything the city had been waiting for. As Shedeur walked off the field, helmet in hand, the cameras caught him glancing up at the crowd, nodding once, almost like he was saying, "Told you." It wasn't arrogance. It was destiny. And in that single look, every Browns fan knew the same thing. The Shedeur Sanders era had officially begun. By Monday morning, Cleveland didn't feel like the same city. The dark clouds that had hovered over the franchise for months had finally lifted, replaced by something that felt foreign: optimism. Sports radio hosts who had spent entire weeks calling for firings were now replaying Shedeur's highlights on loop. Local reporters who once questioned the Browns' direction were suddenly talking about the new standard. And the word rebuild, it vanished from the conversation entirely. The Shedeur Sanders effect wasn't just about football, it was cultural. Within 24 hours, jersey sales tripled. His post-game interview, calm and confident, went viral across every platform. Players from other teams were tweeting about him, celebrities were reposting his throws, and for the first time in years, the Browns were trending for the right reasons. Cleveland wasn't just celebrating a win, it was celebrating a rebirth. Inside the facility, the energy was electric. Meetings that used to drag on now buzzed with purpose. Coaches talked less about analytics and more about instinct. The locker room, once divided, was unified around a single belief. They finally had a leader who got it. Shedeur's approach wasn't loud or flashy. He led through control, through execution, through the quiet confidence that every great quarterback carries. When he spoke, people listened. And when he smiled, the room relaxed. Ownership noticed too. Jimmy Haslam, known for his cold decisiveness, was suddenly smiling on camera, calling Shedeur the future. GM Andy Berry, who'd taken heat for months, now looked like a visionary. Even the veterans, guys like Garrett, Cooper, and Chubb, were talking like this was the start of something historic.
And in a way, it was. Because this wasn't just a change in personnel, it was a philosophical shift. The Browns weren't playing scared anymore. They weren't clinging to outdated systems or playing politics with their roster. They were trusting the spark that had reignited the entire city. As the sun set over the Cleveland skyline that night, the stadium lights still glowed, empty but alive. You could feel it, the sense that something had changed permanently. The fans who'd once said, "Same old Browns," were now whispering something new. This is different. And maybe, for the first time in decades, they were right.
Because this wasn't the end of another false dawn, it was the beginning of an era built around a leader who refused to break, a city that refused to quit, and a team finally ready to rise. The Shedeur Sanders era had officially begun, and Cleveland was never going back. Cleveland had been here before. The heartbreaks, the false promises, the endless cycle of rebuilds that never quite rebuilt anything. But this time, something was different. This wasn't just another coach firing or quarterback change. It was the day the Browns finally stopped surviving and started believing again. What began as chaos, a humiliating loss, a divided locker room, and a fan base on the brink had transformed into a story of revival, of hope clawing its way out of the wreckage. When the dust settled, one image remained etched in everyone's mind. Shedeur Sanders walking through the tunnel, calm and unshaken, headphones in, eyes forward. He didn't need to make a statement. He was the statement. In that quiet confidence, Cleveland found something it had been missing for years. Trust. Trust in the future. Trust in a leader who didn't flinch when the lights were brightest. The Stefansky era ended not with anger, but with clarity. The locker room was reborn. The fans, once fractured by frustration, stood united in anticipation. The media that mocked the Browns for dysfunction now praised their decisiveness. And through it all, Shedeur stood at the center, the calm in the storm, the symbol of everything the franchise could still become. From chaos to hope wasn't just the story of a team firing its coach, it was the story of a city reclaiming its soul. It was about what happens when belief replaces fear, when leadership replaces ego, and when the right player steps up at the exact moment everything seems lost. Cleveland had burned before, but this time, from the ashes, something new was rising. And as the lights of First Energy Stadium glowed against the night sky, one truth became impossible to ignore. The Browns story wasn't ending, it was just beginning.